Welcome back guys to Web Dev Mobile Dev. In this tutorial, you'll learn how to build modern websites using CSS Flexbox. So in this tutorial, we are going to be learning how to work with Flexbox in CSS, and by the end of this tutorial, the concepts we have learned, we are going to apply them to build a website that looks like this, like the landing page of many websites we see nowadays. So I just created a website, gave it the name Technologize, and we created this name. So we have this navbar. We're going to be building this navbar, and we'll see how CSS Flexbox makes building navbars very easy. We also have this hero section. We have an image to the right and some text to the left. With Flexbox, this positioning is very easy to do. So we also have this section here on our plans, and we have some cards, TV cards here. And to accomplish this with Flexbox also is very easy. So we are going to see how Flexbox makes building a website such as this very easy. I'm also going to leave the code for this website on my GitHub, so I'm going to leave the link in the description. So let's quickly go over some slides before I get into code, so that I'm going to be explaining Flexbox. So what is CSS Flexbox? CSS Flexbox is a one-dimensional layout model that facilitates the positioning of items on the page. So we are going to see that with Flexbox, it's easy to position items either horizontally or vertically on the page. So the general idea behind using Flexbox is very simple. So you just need to have a flex container, which is the parent, which is going to be surrounding another container which you call the flex item. So with these two concepts, working with Flexbox becomes very easy. And the flex container must not have only one child. It can have as many children as you would like to have it. So here in this case, we have 3 children in the flex container. And the way that happens in code is you select the flex container and you are going to apply a display of flex, which is a property you apply to the CSS on the flex container. Then the children of the flex container are automatically going to become flex items. So once you apply a flex display of flex to this container, the items, the children in it become flex items, and you can position them now at different positions in the flex container. So there are some different CSS rules that you can either apply to this flex container to position the children in them, or you can apply those rules to the flex children themselves, to the flex items. So in Flexbox, you get the flex container and you have flex children in the flex container. These children can be positioned to the right, just applying a single flex property to the flex container. You can also position the children to the center, still applying another flex property, and we're going to see all those properties in code. You see that you can also align the items, the children diagonally. Means you can position these items individually on the page. And those are just using some different flex properties we are going to see. You can actually place this children at any position in the flex container. Another main concept you need to take note of is the direction of the flex container. So in this case, the flex axis, which is the main axis, is horizontal. So you see that the main axis being horizontal, the justify content property is going to arrange items horizontally. So you see that these items can be placed maybe to the start, to the end, maybe some space between them, but all that is going to occur horizontally using this justify content property. And in case the main axis is vertical, which we have in this case, the justify content property is going to arrange the items vertically. So it's going to justify the content vertically in this case. Unlike this case, justify content works horizontally, but when the flex axis is vertical, justify content is going to arrange them vertically. So you need to take note of that, and we are going to see how it applies in code. So I've just gone ahead and opened an empty project in VS Code. So the body is empty. We just have a title of Flexbox, which is Flexbox here. We have a styles.css, which is presently empty, and this is our index.html. So working with Flexbox, the first thing we need to have is the flex container. So we're going to create a div with a class of flex container, and we're going to, inside this div, which is the flex container, we're going to create 3 other divs, which are the flex items. So I'm going to create a div and call flex item. So I'm going to create 3 other divs which are flex items. So this first div, which is a flex item, we'll just give it item 1, the content of item 1. Name the content item 1. Give this one item 2, and the third div is going to be item 3. Item 3. So we now have these 3 divs. We have now these 3 divs inside this flex container, and these other 3 divs are flex items. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come to our styles.css, and I'll select the flex container. Flex container. I'm going to give it a background color. Let's just give it a background color of light blue. And I'm also going to select the flex children, the flex items. Flex items. I just want things to be visible. That's why I'm giving them these background colors. Giving this one also a background color of, let's just give it light green. So you notice now that these flex items are filling up the horizontal space in the browser, so they're taking up all the width of the browser. And this is the default behavior of block level elements. These flex items are divs, and divs are block level elements. So that's why they take up all the horizontal space on the browser. So apply display of flex. Now notice that the items now are stacked next to each other horizontally, and that's just because of this property display flex. Notice that if I comment it, the items are placed vertically, but once I put the display of flex, they are placed horizontally. And that's Flexbox in action. Notice that if this was a menu, for example, you can easily space out these items now to create a navigation menu. And that's how Flexbox makes arranging items very easy. Let's just give them, the flex items, some height and width so that we can see them better and work with them in a better way. So let's give a height of 100 pixels and give also a width of 100 pixels. So you now see the items now placed that are a bit visible. And let's give a border of 1 pixel solid black. Yeah, so that we can clearly see the border around the items. So we see Flexbox in action, and just by using this single property display flex, when I comment the items are vertical, and when I uncomment display of flex, you notice the items are horizontal, just using a single property of display flex. This flex, using Flexbox, you can apply some properties either to this flex container, which is the parent surrounding these flex items, and you can also apply some properties to the flex items themselves. So let's start first of all with the properties which can be applied to the flex container. So applying properties to the flex container, there is a property known as justify content. And this justify content just specifies how the content is placed along the main axis. In this case, our main axis is horizontal, so justify content is going to permit us arrange items horizontally. We can move these items to the end using a justify content property of flex n. Notice the items move to the end of the box horizontally. The default value is flex start, and the items are at the start. So there's no difference between using flex start and uncommenting it. If the property is absent, by default is flex start. So there's another justify content value of center to move the items to the center. You can also space the items with some space between them, even space around them. You can use space evenly to give even space around the items. So you notice that even space is surrounding the items. You can use space between to give more space between the items. So notice now that there is more space at the end, and you can use space around to give just some small space around with more space between them. Notice that the space around the items is smaller than the space between them with this property of space around. So let me just comment this justify content property. We are done with it. We are going to be taking a look at another Flexbox property which can be applied to the flex container. So if I comment the flex justify content space around, the items move back to the start. So you notice that this is Flexbox, and we have some items inside the flex container, but we can have more than 3 items. You can have any number of items we desire. If we come to the index.html and decide to add more items, so let's create more divs inside the index.html. Let's see, we have now here item 2, item TV, that's item TV with item 4, item 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we now have 8 items inside the div. So what you notice is we initially gave the items some width of 100 pixels, but these items are smaller than 100 pixels because they have been squashed close to each other. And that's because for us to permit the items move to the next line once, we can no more have a 100 pixel space horizontally. There is a property we need to apply to the flex container, which is flexwrap of, and the value has to be wrap. So notice that we apply flexwrap and the value of wrap. You notice that the items move to the next line once there is no more space horizontally. So if we decide to increase the width of the browser, you notice that once there's additional space, if I increase a bit, notice that item 6 is going to move to the line above. So you notice item 6 move above. If I increase the browser again, item 7 can move above. And once there's enough space, all the items are on one line. But if there's not enough space for a 100 pixel box, which is the width of each item, the items are going to move to the line below. And that's just by specifying this property of flexwrap to be wrap. By default, this value is no wrap, and with no wrap, the items don't move to the next line. All of them are going to be placed along the main axis, which is horizontal in this case. So I can comment this property so that things return to the way they were initially, flexwrap, and I can reduce back the number of items so that we work with TV items for the other properties we are going to be demonstrating. So if we give the flex container a height of, let's just say 500 pixels, demonstrate that, because we need some more space vertically to be able to use the align items property. So since we have more space vertically, we can now align these items vertically. And if we use the property align items and we will specify a value of center to align the items to the center of the container, notice that these items are going to move to the center of this container. The align items property can also have a value, and if you align them to the end, they move to the end of the container. So align items is going to work along the cross axis, which is vertical in this case. The pie content is going to work along the horizontal axis. So that's the align item. Notice that we can also combine these different properties. If we add the justify content to space around, it's going to give some space around the items horizontally, but they are going to be aligned to the end of the container, to the center, for example. And we can give them a space, a justify content property of center. And notice that they are centered on the page both horizontally and vertically. So that's the property align items. Let's just comment it. So let's just take the justify content property back to start. So the items are now justified to the start. And let's take away the height on this container. Let's take away this 500 pixels height so that the items are now back to the way they were. So you notice here that the items are horizontal, starting from item 1, so and TV. And there is a property we can use to change the positioning of these items, the direction, and that's flex direction. Flex direction. By default, flex direction is row. If we take a flex direction value of row reverse, notice that it's going to start answer with item TV. So if I use a flex direction of row reverse, the rows are reversed and item TV is the first item in the row, followed by item 2, then item 1. That's because I've used row reverse. The default value here in this case is row. So if I take away reverse and we insert the value of row, you notice that it's back to item 1, 2, and TV. This flex direction property can also be applied to the column. It can also have a value of column. And if you take flex direction of column, notice that the items are now arranged in a column fashion. And this is the default way the items are going to be arranged if we do not have this Flexbox display of flex on the containers. So flex direction of column is going to place them horizontally. But the advantage with this now is we can use the different flex alignment properties and work with them vertically as the way they are now. So we saw justify content works along the main axis. So in this case, since now in a column direction, justify content is going to work along this main axis, which is vertical in this case. So what we can do to have that is we can add this height of 500 pixels back to the container so that we have additional space. And since as justify content works along the main axis, which is vertical in this case, we can position them to the end of this main axis, and notice that they are going to move to the end. You can also position them to, they are going to move to the center. Notice in this case, align items is instead going to work horizontally, which is the cross axis. So we can align them to the center, and they're going to move to the center. So that's align items and justify content. So you have to take note that this justify content in this case is working vertically because we have a flex direction of column. If we take away this flex direction, or we leave the flex direction to the way it was, so if I add direction, I leave it to the way, you notice that this justify content is going to work, in this case, it's going to work horizontally, meaning if I use start, the items are going to be placed to the start of the container. So you have to take note of justify content and align items working based on the direction of the flex container, as I explained in the previous slide. So far, the different flex properties I've been applying them to the flex container itself. But in this case, let's say we want to apply that some properties we can apply to the flex items, and we are going to take a look at the first property, which is align self. So let's give a height to the flex container. Let's give the height of 500 pixels so that the flex container has that height. Remember that the align items property aligns all the items in the flex container. For example, align item center now is aligning all of them to the center, and align items end is going to align all the items to the end. But let's say we want to align only one item to a particular position. We can achieve that using the align self property, and that property is going to be applied to the particular flex item we want to align to a particular position. So let's say we want to select this third flex item and align it to the end. We can select the item using a CSS selector. We're going to select the flex item, and we're going to grab the end child using the pseudo class end child, and in this case we want the third flex item. So we can apply the flex property of align self to this property and give it a value of n. So if we apply flex n to this third property, to this third item, you notice the item itself is aligned to the n. We can as well grab the first item, give it an align self property, and align it maybe to the center if you want to take a look at that. So let's grab the first item, the first one, and align it to the center. Notice now that this item is aligned to the center. Using this align self property, we can align a particular item to any position, that's vertically in this case. There's another property we can apply to these flex items to position them at different positions in different orders on the screen. Let me first of all take away this height of 500 pixels, and let me uncomment this aligning of the items to different positions. So let's as well select the second item. In this case, we have selected the first two, and now let me select the second item. Select the second item. So the TV items are selected, and let's say we want to change the order of these items. We want item TV to be at the first position and item 1 to be at the third position, but we want item 2 to stay where it is. So one of the ways you can achieve this could be to come to your HTML and move these items to different positions. Meaning, if you replace item 1 here with item TV, if you change item 1 here to item TV is going to be placed first, and item 1 is going to be placed at the last position. But that's going to be modifying your HTML code. Let's say we want to achieve this with CSS. We can use Flexbox to achieve this, and the property we apply to the flex items is an order property. So you want item 1 to be ordered the third item, so we're going to give you an order of TV. We want item 2 to be ordered to stay at this position, so we're going to give you an order of 2, leave it at order of 2. And want item TV to be ordered the first position, so we'll give you an order of 1. So what I notice now is item TV now is ordered 1, so it's going to be placed at the first position. Item 1 is ordered TV, is going to be placed at the third position, and item 2 stays where it is. That's using this order property on the flex items. So with that, you can have any number of items and you can order them in put different orders for the items just using this order property. So let me comment it back so that things go back to the way they were initially. So there is another property for these flex items, which is another way of specifying the width of the item. It's called flex basis, and flex basis is just the Flexbox way of specifying the width. So if I call flex basis here and give a flex basis of 100 pixels, notice that the width and height is the same as specifying a width of 100 pixels if I use flex basis of 100 pixels. And this flex basis comes along with other properties such as flex grow, flex shrink, which we are going to look at them quickly. So another property you can apply to these flex items to make them grow at different rates is the flex grow property. So the flex grow property is going to make an item to grow at a certain rate. Let's say we apply a flex grow to item TV of, let's give it a flex grow of TV. Notice that now, since as we want item TV to grow and we have not applied flex grow to any of these other items, item TV is going to go to fill up all this space. So if you apply the flex grow of TV, notice that item TV grows to fill up all the other space available. We can apply flex grow properties as well to item 2 and item 1. And notice that when all the items have the same value of the flex grow, they grow at the same rate. And that's because the math is simple. Let's say we apply a value of 1, 1. I'm going to do the math with some simple values so that we don't. If we apply a flex grow of 1, 1 to all of the items, what we are saying is item 1 go at the rate of TV, go at the rate of 1 plus 1 plus 1. So go at the rate of 1 divided by TV. So that's just ratio mathematics. So yeah, item 1 is going at the rate of 1 over TV, that's 1/3. Item 2 is also going at the rate of 1/3, and item TV is going at the rate of 1/3. So all these items are growing at the same rate. That's why you notice them occupying the same space. Flex grow means that when you increase the width of the browser, all the items are growing at the same rate in this case. So they are occupying the same space, the same width in the browser. So we can make the items go at different rates. Let's say we want item TV to go at a higher rate. We can increase the value here to TV. So now we are saying item TV go at the rate of TV divided by TV plus 1, that's 5. So item TV is going at the rate of TV over 5, TV feet. So it's going to grow faster than all the other items. Item 1 and 2 are still going to grow at the same rate, which is 1 feet in this case. Item 1 is going at the rate of 1 over 5. Item 2 at the rate of 1 over 5. So it's going to grow faster than all the other items. So if I increase the width of the browser, you see that item TV is going at the rate of TV feet, while the other ones are going at the rate of 1 feet. So that's the flex grow property. So the last property we are going to be looking at now is the flex shrink property. And it's unlike the flex grow property, the flex shrink works with handling the way the items are going to shrink. So if you apply a flex shrink, so let me just comment first of all the flex grow property. And the flex shrink property is going to be useful in cases where we want the items to be able to shrink. So let me first of all increase the width of this browser, and I'm going to give the items a larger flex basis. So let me give them flex basis of, let's say, maybe 300 pixels. So you see that now the items are occupying the whole width of the browser. And flex shrink is going to affect the way the items are going to shrink compared to one another. Presently, without the flex shrink property being applied, all the items are going to shrink at the same rate. But let's say we want maybe item 1 to shrink faster than all the other items. So we reduce the width of the browser. Want item 1 to reduce faster than all the items. So we're going to apply that flex shrink property here. So we're going to say flex shrink. And let's say we want it to reduce at, let's say, maybe 3 times faster than all the other items. So we're going to say 3, and we can copy this flex shrink and also apply to all the other items. Control V. So the same with the flex grow. When the value is the same, all of the items will shrink at the same rate. So you notice that all of them have the same width. We reduce the width of the browser. But in this case, let's say we want item 1 to reduce faster than all the others. We'll give them lower values of flex shrink. So that item 1 shrinks at the rate of TV over 5. So notice now that when we reduce the browser, item 1 is shrinking faster than all the other items. That's because the flex shrink value for item 1 is higher. So that's this flex shrink property in action. So a common use case for flex grow and flex shrink is just in case you want the items to grow and shrink at the same rate. And we usually apply that to the flex items at once. So we can just give a single property, which is flex, to this item. So if you come to the flex items and we just apply a property of flex, and we give a value of, let's say, 1. In this case, it means all the items have the same flex value. Flex here of 1 means give all the items a flex grow of 1, a flex shrink of 1. So it means all the items are going to grow and shrink at the same rate, and it means that practically occupying all the width of the browser, and when you shrink them, they shrink at the same rate. So that's just by applying the single property of flex of 1. And when you give them a flex of 1, it means things that will always go to fill the width of the browser, they don't even need to have a flex basis, because the flex basis is the original width of the items when they cannot grow or shrink. So that's the different properties you can apply to the flex box. So I've gone over the Flexbox basics and all what you need to be able to build a site like this. But we have to put that into practice so that it stays into your brain muscle. So we are going to be using this website I just called Technologize. So we have this navbar at the top, which we'll see how to position all these different nav links on the website on the navbar very easily using Flexbox. We also have this hero section here using Flexbox. We have an image we are positioned to the right, some text to the left, and we also have this our pricing plan section. So we have these different cards for the pricing plans: starter plan, silver and golden plan. So I've arranged these items also using Flexbox. So we'll see that generally the same principles we have been seeing so far working with Flexbox are going to apply to this, because here you notice this navbar is actually the flex container, and these different links and buttons are the flex items. Same for this section. The section here with this grayish background is the nav container. This part and this one are the flex items. In this other case, we also have this light blue background with this our pricing plan section is the flex container. These cards are the flex items. So we are going to see that it's very easy to position these items here using Flexbox. And as I mentioned, I'll leave the code on my GitHub repo so you can easily refer to it back. I'm also going to leave the code for the different Flexbox basics we saw also on my GitHub repo. So let's head into code and let me explain how, and let's go over this quickly. So I've gone ahead and created the empty project here. I just gave it a title of Technologize. So we have here styles.css empty for now, index.html, what I just showed, the body is empty, and we have the project open to the right here, so it's presently blank. This is the website we are going to be creating, so we are going to be just looking at it and reproducing what we have on this other browser tab open to the right. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm not going to be wasting time on the HTML code and some other CSS properties that are not directly linked to this video. So if you want to learn more about HTML and maybe all the other CSS concepts I use in this tutorial, you can just go back to my previous tutorial. But I'm going to be strictly focusing our attention here on CSS Flexbox. So we're going to see how Flexbox can permit us build a website like this, and it's going to be very easy. So I'm just going to be copying some code, pasting, and explaining everything I use here in the code. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have here is the website is going to be separated into different sections. So the first section we have here is the nav, which is the nav bar. So in essence, I'm talking about this nav bar here. So we're going to have 3 sections. We're going to have this nav bar, we're going to have this other section here, this main section, and we're going to have this pricing plan section. So we have here the nav bar presently. So this nav bar is simple. We just have this Technologize, which is a div we have here. So this nav container, I've given the nav bar a class of nav container. So that we know that it's actually this container here for our Flexbox. So I've given it a class of nav container, and I've given the nav bar children a class of nav items so that we can easily style them in our CSS. So we have nav item for this first div, which is a direct child of the nav bar, and the next UL, which is a direct child of the nav as well. I also gave it a class of nav item. So we have these 2 nav items inside the nav bar. This UL also has children, and the UL is also going to be considered as a Flexbox, as a flex container. So this UL, I gave it a class of UL container, and I gave its children, which are these LIs, classes of UL items. So this UL, which is a nav item, is also a nav container. It's a nav item for this nav container, and it's a nav container for these other UL items. So we're going to see how to style this using Flexbox, and it's going to be very easy. We're just going to come out with this nav bar very quickly. So let's just head to our styles.css, and I just quickly pasted this code here, and you notice here that I'm just importing some Google font, and the name of this font here is Montserrat with different weights. So I've just imported this font from Google font. And the next thing we have now is the reboot styles that I'm applying to the main container. So I'm sorry, to all the items, because star here means I'm applying the star to all the items on the page. Just giving them a border sizing of border box, margin of 0 and padding of 0, so that no item has margin or padding of 0 and they have a border box. So this one is just generalized way of rebooting our styles. So we have the body here. In this case, I'm just giving them a font family of Montserrat, which is the font we imported from Google font, and the sans serif in this case, which is the font family, is just an alternative in case we cannot load Montserrat from Google. We are going to fall back to sans serif. We have a background color which I applied in this case, which some gray color, which is what we have here. So you notice that we now have a gray color here. So these are index.html. This navbar, we now have the navbar here, Technologize, and so you notice that all these items are divs. So that's why if you head back to it, so now this is a div, and this other one UL is also a block level element. So that's why the items are placed horizontally, the Technologize and the pricing, the different links. So let's go ahead and start applying the styles to the content. So I'm going to first of all select this nav container, which is our flex container in this case, and I'm going to apply properties to style these flex items. The direct flex items for this nav container are this div and this other UL. So they are the two flex items or flex children for this navbar, which is a flex container. So I'm going to select them in our CSS. So I select, in this case, we are going to be styling the navbar. So I'm going to select the navbar. Remember that the navbar is the class of nav container. So if I go to our HTML, we see that it has a class of nav container. So I'm going to select it. Then I'm going to give it a padding of 10, 15 pixels top and bottom, and 40 pixels left and right. So if you head to our HTML, you'll see this pattern around the navbar. So if I go back and if I uncomment it, notice that there is no padding, and that's why that bunch towards the edges. But once I put that padding, we have now some padding around the navbar. So I'm also going to give them a background color of blue. So you see now that this background color is around the navbar. And after that, I'm going to give it a display of flex. When I give it a display of flex, you notice that these nav links which were below the navbar, these nav links were below this Technologize logo. So now when I give it a display of flex, the nav links move to the right of the logo. If I uncomment it, notice that the nav links are below actually the logo presently. But when I give it a display of flex, they are going to move to the right of the logo. So they are going to be side by side. Technologize and the nav links are going to be side by side. And we saw that actually when we were learning about Flexbox. So I'm going to apply the display of flex here, and you see that the flex now they are now placed horizontally. So after that, I'm going to give them a justify content of space around. See that justify content of space around is going to space them around horizontally. We also saw that using Flexbox. But we can now align items to the center. We want this Technologize to be placed at the center. So if I apply an align item center, see that Technologize moves to the center. So that's Flexbox in action. I've just applied some few properties here to arrange things a bit better. So something you notice now is these items, this Technologize, which is this first div, which is the logo, and these nav links inside the UL, they are the flex children of this flex container, which is our nav container. The issue is these items are not occupying the same space in the navbar, and the way we consider is if we inspect, as we explained in the previous tutorial when I was teaching the box model. I explained that you could click on inspect and you can inspect your HTML elements using Chrome, and you can watch that tutorial if you don't know how that happens. So if I click on this arrow and I hover over the different items, you notice that these two flex items are just occupying the space inside the nav, inside the flex container. So you see that Technologize is just occupying this small space around it. You see that it's just occupying some small space, and this other flex item, which is the UL, is just occupying also some small space in the navbar. But what I want to do is want them to occupy equal space in the navbar. So I want actually all these nav links to occupy half of the navbar, and I want Technologize to occupy half of the navbar. So I don't want them to occupy just this small space as we see. So we can achieve that by using a display. We can apply a flex of 1 to the flex items. So I'm just going to apply nav to the nav flex items. I'll apply a flex of 1. So if you now notice here, you see that the items now occupy equal space in the browser, and you see that they're actually filling up all the space in the browser, unlike the initial situation where they were not occupying all the space. We apply a flex of 1. The two items are going to occupy all the space in the browser, and they're going to occupy equal space in the browser. So what that means presently is that this Technologize, which is the logo, the first div, is actually occupying all the space from here to the center, and these other items, these other links here, nav links, are occupying all the space from here to the end. So they're occupying equal space in the browser, and we can make use of that now to be able to lay out these other items inside this other space using Flexbox as well. So we can now make these items to be the flex container, apply flex to their container, and they're going to be placed horizontally in this space we have here. So if I head to the HTML, we saw that these items these nav ULs are inside this container, the UL container. So they are inside the UL container, and all these items now UL are the flex items of this nav container. So these nav items are inside another container, the UL container. So if I come to our CSS and I select the UL container, which is the container containing all these items, and I apply a property of display of flex to it, notice that the items now are placed horizontally because I just applied this property of display flex. So what I can do now is give them a justify content of space between, so that the space now between the items, I can just give align items of center, and I give them also a list style of none, so that it removes the bullet points we saw before them. If I uncomment, you see that when there is no list style, initially when we would have a list style of none, we have these bullet points in front of the different UL items. But if I give them a list style type of none, you notice that the bullet points disappear, and that's Flexbox in action with some other CSS properties. And we see that the navbar is already taking shape, and we're already getting a nice looking navbar. So with those CSS Flexbox properties out of the way, what is left now is just to apply some basic CSS to this to make it look like this navbar we have here. So we have this button here. We want to give it a text of white and increase the font size as compared to this. We want these different links here. We'll give them a text of white as well, and move the text decoration from the link so that this line should not be below them. And we also want this button to have a background color of white, and when you hover over it, you should give it a gray thing. So that's just the different styles we are going to be applying now. So I'm going to start first of all by giving the logo a font weight of this and a color of white. So we now notice that the logo now has a white color and the font weight is bold. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give the buttons a white color and remove the text decoration. So we'll move the text decoration and give the buttons, the links, a white color. So the links now have a white color and there's no underline. I want to now style the button and give the button some border around it and give it also a background color of white. So I'm going to style the button, give some padding, border radius, and give it a background color of white. So we now have the button now looking like this. And the next thing I'm going to do is, and I'm going to now make a hover effect on the button, change the text to blue, increase the font size, and so we're now going to change now the hover effect. Now we now have the text of blue in hover over the button. So with the button's anchor tag is now has a color of blue and the font weight is bold. So we now have the text of blue, the font weight is bold. And now when you hover over the button, we want to give it a background color of black. The border radius should be gray. So now we can hover over the button now, background color of black and the border radius. So that's what we have given today. Those are the different styles we have just applied to get the navbar exactly to be like this one we have here. So the next thing we are going to be doing is styling this next section, and we are going to see how CSS Flexbox can also make this very easy. So HTML, first of all, I'm going to first of all put the HTML code here. So under the navbar, we have the next section which I call the header. So we now have this header section under the navbar. I just gave it a class of left item. The header has two sections. It has two children. This first div which I gave a class of left item, and the next div which has an image, I gave it a class of right item. Because if we take a look at it here we notice that we have this left part of it is the first div which I gave a class of left item. So it's this first div, and the right div that has the image is this other part of the section that's the image, and I gave it a class of right item. So if we just take a look at it in our browser now, we see that things are not placed well because the image is just filling up any amount of space, not restraining the image, and the text just goes to the right top. So we're going to arrange things using Flexbox, and we'll see how it's very easy to do that. So working with this next section, which is the header section, it is just, we have this header element that has two elements children in it, the div with the class of left item, and we have another div with a class of right item. This div with the class of right item is the div that contains this image. And so to make this image to be a bit more responsive, we are going to make the image to fill up 100% of its parent, and we are just going to come to our HTML and make the image to be 100% of its parent. So the image looks a lot better. It's a bit better placed. The next thing we want to do now here is to be able to give some padding around this main container as we see here. So we want to give some padding around it, and we also want to make this first div, which if we come to our HTML, we want to make this first div, this left item div, to be placed at the left, and we want the image to be placed at the right. This other right div that has the image, we want it to be placed at the right. And the way we can accomplish that is just by applying a display of flex to this header. Now if we apply display flex to this header, the two children are going to be placed side by side horizontally. So we are going to come to our HTML. Presently, you notice that I placed vertically. Now this one is above the image. But if we come to our HTML and give a display of flex to this header and just give it some padding, and give now justify content align item center, notice now that the image is to the left, the text is to the right, the image is to the right, the text and this other div is to the right, is to the left. So that's just by applying those few properties to it. So the next thing we want to do is want this heading to have a larger font. I want to increase the font size. I want to give some space below the heading, because if you take a look here, you notice that this heading is big and there's some space below the heading to have the next paragraph. So to accomplish that, we are going to come to our styles, and we are going to give the heading now a font weight of bold, increase the font weight and font size, and give some margin below it. So you notice now that the heading has increased its size and there's some space below it, and it looks a lot more like this one. So we can also increase the size of the paragraph. So if you increase the size of the paragraph, you notice now that the paragraph size has increased. I've increased the font size of the paragraph. And the next thing is, the next two things we are going to be doing are actually the most important things, and is how are we going to achieve the fact to make this section at the left, this left section, to be larger than the right section. And we saw that we can do that using the flex grow property. We can make this left section to grow larger than this right section by giving this left section a higher flex grow property with higher flex property. Presently, they are of equal sizes. Notice that the width of this section and this right section are of the same width. But if we come to our CSS and we give this left section a flex of 2 and the right a flex of 1, so the flex now has a larger flex value while the right has a smaller flex value. So you notice that the flex now is smaller than the right now has a larger. So you notice now that we have already accomplished that. We now have this second section here is the same like the one we wanted to build, and that's just by applying these different flex properties. So now we want to work on this other section, the pricing plan section. So you notice that it's just a section. Here we have a title, we have some different pricing plans with some information in them. So if we come to our HTML what we have is just this content. This portion here is called main, so I'm going to create a section called main. I'm going to give it a heading, which is this heading we have here. So that's the heading I'm creating here, our pricing plans. Then I'm going now to create now a plan container. So a div that I'm going to call plan container. I'm creating a div called plan container, which is going to hold all these different pricing plans. So I've created a div called plan container. In this div called plan container, we have the first pricing plan, which is another div. In this div now, I've given it a class of plan item. So plan container is what contains all these divs, and all these different divs here, these different plans are called plan items. So that's what I call here, plan item. See that the first plan item has a class of starter, and it's this first div here, it has a class of starter. It has a heading, it has paragraph, it has an image and a span. So I'm going to be showing you all the different portions of it, and at the end of it, it has a button. The first plan has a button, and it's this button we have here. So the next plan is the silver plan. So the silver plan is also a plan item because it's inside this plan container. So it's also inside this plan container, and it's a plan item. Then it has a special class also of silver, and it has a title of silver plan. So this div is actually this other div we have here. And the last plan is the next plan, which is it's also a plan item. This last plan here, the gold plan, it has a special class of gold for it. Then it has its title, gold plan, and it has text, and it has a button at the end of it as well. So we're going to see how to style this using Flexbox. And for this one, I'm just going to paste the styles at once in our styles.css. Just going to paste the styles, and I'm going to explain how those styles apply to, so that I'm going to explain how those styles permit us get what we want to get, permit us get all the styling we have here. So if there is something you will need to take away here is for you to understand what is the flex container and what are the flex items in that container. So if you look at it in this case, you will be like, from the perspective of your HTML, you need to know what you created to be the flex container. So let's say, you know that with VS Code, you can actually close different sections of your HTML. So I can as well close this other section here. And in the next card, I can also close this next plan item. Okay. So I've reduced things, and you can now see, you can now look at things in a better way. So you see now that this is the first div. This div here is the div called our plan container. So what you need to do is, in your CSS, you need to select this div, which you call your plan container. Give it a display of flex, so that all these other divs which are inside it are going to lie and now going to be placed horizontally. So you remember that this div is the plan container is the div that has all these different plans, and now these different plans are plan items. Each of them have their own special classes. So all these divs which are plan items are inside this plan container and are going to be placed horizontally. So if you head back to our CSS, you notice that this is where I select the plan container. Let me scroll to the top. This is the plan container I selected here, and I gave it a display of flex, and I justify the content to be spaced evenly. So you notice that there is even space between these items, because I use this property of space evenly. It applies along the main axis. I gave them display of flex so that the plan items should be placed one after the other. So that's the main property I applied to them. So all the others are applied are just normal CSS properties. So that you see that I style the heading, I give the background color first of all to the main of a certain light blue color. So this color we have here is actually this background color we have here. This background color. I give the padding around the main of 40 pixels. So we have padding around the main content. So there's padding all around of 40 pixels. The heading, I select the heading, I make the font size to be extra large, I align it to the center, and I give it a margin bottom of 40 pixels. So this heading here, I've selected it, I've given it a larger font, I've given it a margin bottom of 40 pixels. And I've aligned it to the center. That's why the heading is at the center. If you descend now to the plan container, is what I just explained earlier. giving it display flex and justifying the content to space evenly so that we have even space around the items which are horizontal. The plan items, I've given them a font size of small so that I want the size of the text inside them to be small. I've given the font size of small, giving some padding so that the content inside the plan items is not around the edges of the plan items. So that's why we have this padding around, because I gave them this padding here of 20 pixels. I've given them a fixed width and height of 250 pixels for the width, 320. So it has a higher, the height is greater than the width. If you take a look at the, notice that we have a smaller width 250 and we have the height, so the plans are taller and each of them have a fixed width and height because of this value as specified here. I've given them a background color of white and a border radius. So we see now that the background color is white and they have rounded radius, rounded border radius because of the color of what I specified there. The plan title, which is actually the title you see in each of these plans here, is what I call the plan title. So I gave it a font size of extra large, increase the font size, and I align the text to the center. So you see the plan titles are the center and they have a larger font because of what I did here. The next one, which is plan item. So I've grabbed all the plan items, all the children. So this one is a descendant selector. This arrow you see, this carried to the greater than sign. So the star after it means get all the plan items, get the plan item and all its direct descendants. Select all its direct descendants with this star and give them a margin bottom of 15 pixels. So that's just giving a margin bottom because the plan item actually is what we have here. So I'm giving a margin bottom here, this is a margin bottom here, I give another margin bottom, margin bottom, margin bottom. That's why we have all these spaces here because of this rule as specified. Okay, the features, I've given the display of flex. So if we go back to and I expand here the plan items, so this is the plan items and what I was talking of. You see that I've given a margin bottom, this style here, this style, this style here, sorry, this one. It means grab the plan items and all their direct children, give them a margin bottom of 15 pixels. So it means this is the plan item, this is the plan item here, and all its direct children. It means give a margin bottom of 15 pixels to this heading, and after the heading, give it 15 pixels below the paragraph, give 15 pixels below this div, give 15 pixels below the pricing, and give 15 pixels below the button and paragraph. So that's why we have all these spaces here. Below this first paragraph, 15 pixels below this next level here, we have 15 pixels of margin. Below the pricing, we have 15 pixels of margin, and below this paragraph, we have 15 pixels of margin. That's because of this rule. Okay, so the next thing I'm doing is I'm applying a display of flex to the features so that they can be placed horizontally in a row. So the features is actually this div we have here. This div that has the image and it has this span with the different notation. So we have this image here and we have the span, and this image is the check mark circle. So this check mark circle and the text should be placed horizontally. That's why I've applied display flex because by default the check mark is going to be at the top and the image is going to be, and this text is going to be below the check mark. Then we'll apply flex to the div container. The check mark goes to the left and the image and the text goes to the right. That's because of this property here. Display flex. And the image by default is a very large image. If I uncomment this, the image is a very large image. That's why I'm giving it a fixed width of 20 pixels. Because if I don't give it that width, the image is going to be very large. So I've given it a fixed width of 20 pixels and giving it a margin height of 5 pixels so that the image is not directly close to the text. There's some margin height of 5 pixels separating the image and the text. Then I've now applied some styles to get that button, giving border, giving it some hover, giving it a gold color, and specified some files in. And that's all for this. That's all for this, for the site we're trying to get using CSS Flexbox. So that's it, guys, for this tutorial. And if you got value from this tutorial and you learned something, consider subscribing to this channel if you want to get videos like this. You can also just leave me a like, and I appreciate that a lot. And I'm going to see you in the next CSS tutorials. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button at the bottom right.